In Mass Effect Andromeda's multiplayer, you are part of an Apex team, the best of the best the Nexus has to offer. While not a regular group of soldiers, they are nonetheless talented individuals that take on the most dangerous and important missions in this new galaxy. In this series, we are going to take a look at the various class builds for the various characters in the game's multiplayer. So with that in mind, I'm Darcblade, and let's take a look at our next Mass Effect Andromeda Multiplayer character, the Krogan Mercenary. Now, as always, remember that these builds are aimed at the harder difficulties in the game and focus on level 20, rank 10 characters, although there will be advice for lower ranked characters later on in the video. The Krogan Mercenary has a lot of options available to what spec you want him to be. He can focus on powers, or weaponry, or melee. On top of that, he also comes with strong defenses, making him a very versatile character. However, I've had the most success with this character when focusing on power damage and damage over time. With that, I spec the Krogan Mercenary as follows. I start by maxing out FLAMETHROWER, going up to rank 6, putting points into anti-armor over blinding heat. Anti-armor ensures that FLAMETHROWER will do its most damage against armored targets, and generally the harder targets in the game come with armor. Anti-armor ensures that you'll be able to bring these down quickly. Blinding heat is okay, but considering the way I have some of the other abilities, anti-armor became the better option here. Next, with rank 5, I put points into reach over lingering burn. Now this one's a little bit controversial. Lingering burn would be better for pure damage over time, but reach gives FLAMETHROWER a better quality of life. This means that you don't have to get as close to targets for them to be affected by FLAMETHROWER. It also means that you don't actually have to go out of position to hit them with FLAMETHROWER either. It is down to personal preference at the end of the day, and on certain maps, lingering burn could probably be better, but I found reach more useful for me personally. Next, with rank 4, I put points into damage over recharge speed, again to ensure FLAMETHROWER does as much damage as it can. Next, with FORTIFY, I got up to rank 4, putting points into protection over mobility. This adds a little bit more damage protection to the Krogan Mercenary, making him even more durable. Now, I didn't feel it was worth maxing FORTIFY out. However, if you did want to max it out, at rank 6, it depends what you prefer, explosive purge or a move and defense. If you like to stay in stationary, then I would say a move and defense. However, if you like to move around the map a bit, then explosive purge. And with rank 5, I would put points into power armor just for the boost to your melee damage and weapon accuracy and stability. Shield feedback doesn't matter that much thanks to the rage tree available to the Krogan Mercenary. Next, moving on to FLAK cannon. I maxed this out, going up to rank 6, putting points into Shredder over FLAK. Whilst FLAK will cause a far bigger damage area, Shredder is what I'm interested in. Shredder adds a very nice damage over time tick to enemies affected by your FLAK cannon. Over the course of 8 seconds, they can take up to 800 damage, which is quite a fair amount. This, combined with other abilities as well, comes in very useful. Next, with rank 5, I put points into stunning over anti-armor. FLAK cannon doesn't really do that much damage against armoured opponents. However, we're not taking FLAK cannon necessarily for its initial damage output, but we're taking it for its stunning effect and damage over time thanks to Shredder. Stunning basically allows you to briefly stun enemies for 2 seconds. So hitting an enemy with FLAK cannon will not only stun them, but put the damage over time thanks to the Shredder augmentation, after which you can follow this up with FLAMETHROWER to add even more damage over time, or follow it up with weaponry. And then finally, with rank 4, I put points into damage and force over power cells. This is basically to increase the FLAK cannon damage, but I do advise people who don't maybe have consumables to spend on increasing your power cell capacity to maybe consider taking power cells, as the increase is quite a lot. Next, moving on to the passives, with munitions training, I only go up to rank 4, putting points into power and melee. This is mainly to increase the power damage of FLAK cannon and FLAMETHROWER, as well as to increase the power cell capacity. Finally, with Rage, I maxed this out, going up to rank 6, putting points into Inspirational over Berserker. Whilst Berserker is great for melee-focused Krogans, Inspirational comes in very useful for not only increasing my health, but providing buffs to my allies. As Rage no longer has to be triggered solely by melee kills, this means that any close kills will be able to trigger this Rage, thus giving you and your allies the damage resistance buff. Next, in rank 5, I put points into Unstoppable over Martial Artist. Again, this is because I'm not really using the character as a melee class, and Unstoppable will give me extra damage resistance if there are enemies within close range that are killed by the Krogan Mercenary. And then finally, with rank 4, I put points into Resilience over Melee. Again, because this is not really a melee focused class, and with points in Rage like this, it means that the Krogan Mercenary has at the moment the highest health and shields in the multiplayer. As for weaponry, you can really go with what you want. As the Krogan Mercenary is a Krogan, he can carry a lot of heavy weaponry and not have the 100% recharge rate punished. With that in mind, I normally take a shotgun as a primary weapon and then follow it up with something to use at longer distances. As for your gear slot, I personally like to take something to increase either my power cell capacity or survivability. Now moving on to the heart of the episode to talk about the Krogan Mercenary's moves and abilities. Their first move is FLAMETHROWER. At one point it was a unique move to the Krogan Mercenary, but has since been found on other characters like the Turian Agent. Once used and the ability button held, the Krogan Mercenary will unleash a short-range jet of flames that causes bonus damage to armoured targets, even more so with points in anti-armour, but on top of that it also burns enemies, causing damage over time. Whilst the damage over time is not as great as it could be, thanks to me putting points into reach over lingering damage, it's still substantial enough, especially when combined with FLAK cannon and its shredder augmentation. However, it has a fairly large cooldown timer, but in between weapon fire and using FLAK cannon, you should have FLAMETHROWER available to you quite often. As FLAMETHROWER is a flame-based move, unshielded opponents, so that's enemies who have armour and normal standard red health, will be primed for a fire combo. However, the Krogan Mercenary has no way to actually activate his own combos and will instead have to rely on his allies to do so. One of the downsides about FLAMETHROWER is that when casting the ability, you will not be able to take cover, so you'll be out in the open standing there with your arm out as the FLAMETHROWER engulfs enemies. Whilst enemies who are close and caught within the flames pose little risk, enemies from the flanks can still openly shoot at you. But with the Krogan Engineer's Fortify and Rage talents, you won't take a ton of damage. Also, unshielded enemies who are caught in the flames will panic slightly. This will stop them in their tracks, preventing them from shooting back at you. However, this only lasts for about a second or two. One of the biggest annoyances with FLAMETHROWER is that it does have a short reach. This can be alleviated slightly thanks to the reach augmentation, which ensures the FLAMETHROWER has a better quality of life. One thing I will say about the FLAMETHROWER is when you do use it, try to tag as many foes with it as you can within one use of it. Not only will this put the damage over time effect on multiple opponents, but set up multiple opponents for fire combos. However, FLAMETHROWER comes in very handy when used in unison with FLAK cannon, but I'll cover that in a minute. The next ability available to the Krogan Mercenary is FORTIFY, a turn off, turn on ability that once active will coat the Krogan Mercenary in a white glowing mesh that provides damage resistance. However, when it's active, the Krogan Mercenary's movement will be restricted. He will move slower than he normally can without it. You can turn off Fortify though if you have to move somewhere quickly, but for the most part there's little reason to do so, so having it on as much as possible is optimal. Once it's on, it will provide damage resistance to the Krogan Mercenary. The formula that Mass Effect Andromeda uses for damage resistance is that 100 damage resistance cuts all incoming damage by half. Fortify, combined with the Rage talents, especially when you can get Rage activated, will ensure that the Krogan Mercenary at least has 100 damage resistance, so it's very handy. The only other unique aspect about Fortify is if you wanted to go up to rank 6, putting points into Explosive Purge. Basically, when you deactivate the ability, an electric explosion will occur around the Krogan Mercenary. This will cause electric damage to targets, dealing bonus damage to shielded opponents, but it also sets them up for a tech combo, which again has to be set off by your allies. However, there is little practicality in using this, especially on the Krogan Mercenary. One side tip for Fortify is that if you do go down, then Fortify will be automatically turned off, so don't forget to turn it back on. The next ability is FLAK Cannon. Once activated, the Krogan Mercenary will fire a Krogan designed shell that bursts into shrapnel upon impact. The initial damage is fairly high. On top of that, when it bursts into shrapnel, the shrapnel damage can be fairly substantial too, especially against unarmoured targets. However, enemies who have armour, as in yellow health bars, will take reduced damage from the FLAK cannon. Once you fire their ability, it does have a slight arc to it. It's not really noticeable like say a grenade, but it's still something to keep in mind. The FLAK cannon also uses power cells. It's a power cell ability, meaning that you have a limited supply of them, but they can be restocked from ammo boxes. This is also probably its greatest downside. However, the main purpose for the FLAK cannon on the Krogan Mercenary is to be used as a stun and a damage over time ability. With points in Shredder, you inflict a large damage over time dot effect on targets affected by the FLAK cannon. On top of that, enemies affected by the FLAK cannon are temporarily stunned as well. So you can see a kind of rotation coming into play here. Say you're approaching a target, first you'll use FLAK cannon, you stun them. apply the damage over time from Shredder. Then you immediately go to Flamethrower, burn them for a few seconds, applying the Flamethrower's damage over time and burning effects, after which move on to the next target. Or if it's a target with slightly more health, you can use Flak Cannon again to stun them again and then maybe finishing them off with weapon fire. Flak Cannon can also come in handy for burst damage, although by using Flak Cannon as a burst damage ability, it means you're going to use up your power cells very quickly. However, this can help bring down opponents like Ascendants and other tricky opponents quickly.
However, whilst the stun is useful against most foes, it doesn't seem to affect the larger targets like Destroyers and Hydras.
Again, moving on to the passives, munition training is primarily used to increase the effectiveness of Flak Cannon and Flamethrower, as well as provide extra power cells. Although it adds extra melee damage, it's not too vital with the Krogan Mercenary, although it's an added bonus. If you did want to focus the Krogan Mercenary on more of a weapon based build, I would advise maxing out munitions training, maybe dropping points in either Flak Cannon or Flamethrower. And then finally with Rage. Whilst Rage is a passive, it also could be considered an ability of sorts. Basically, when you're able to get 3 close range kills, that's kills within 10 meters of you, you will trigger Rage mode, where the Krogan becomes basically enraged. After which he will gain damage resistance, a melee bonus, and a health regeneration bonus. This health regeneration can take his health all the way back up to maximum if he's lost any. However, Rage doesn't last forever. If you go for 15 seconds without actually getting another close range kill, the Rage passive will drop. With the Krogan Mercenary and the way I've got him spec'd, Rage is there to provide maximum survivability by increasing his health, shields, as well as damage resistance. He also comes with that nice ally damage resistance buff should any other player be near you when Rage is active. Now, the Krogan Mercenary is a Krogan, as thus he's fairly slow and cumbersome, especially thanks to Fortify as well. However, he has the highest health and shields in the game, especially with the way he's been spec'd, even above other Krogan. He has a standard dodge mechanic fueled with his jetpack on his back. Although his hover mechanics are not very good, he can't stay airborne for very long. However, he does come with a powerful melee headbutt, and even without many points put into increasing his melee damage, still deals a lot, and can be very useful for when enemies get on top of you. Now, if you don't have a rank 10 level 20 Krogan Mercenary, I would first advise maxing out Flak Cannon. Afterwards, focus on Flamethrower, and depending what you favour next, either work on Fortify, munitions training, or Rage. If you want to increase your damage even further, munitions training. If you want to increase your survivability, then Rage or Fortify. Overall, the Krogan Mercenary is one of the toughest characters in the game, and at one point I didn't really know how to use him. However, since Mass Effect Andromeda's major patches, power abilities and power focused classes are much more useful. And as such, I've actually come to enjoy the Krogan Mercenary as a power focused damage over time class. The fact that Flak Cannon can stun and deal damage over time, and that on top of the Flamethrower damage over time, means that you only have to focus on each foe for a few seconds before moving on to the next. This allows you to basically dot up every target you see. Playing like this, I've had some very successful games and some very high scores. I would say that Flak Cannon is better than Flamethrower, but the two can complement one another really well. The Krogan Mercenary, on top of its damage over time capabilities, initial damage, survivability, can briefly crowd control enemies. He can really fill a tank role, a stable backbone for any team tackling the harder difficulties in the game. Anyway, I hope you found this guide helpful, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you another Mass Effect Andromeda Multiplayer class guide to the Krogan Mercenary. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.